little bit about your work history.
Okay. Great. So I got an engineering degree from Marietta College in Ohio, and then I got an MBA from the Ohio State University, and I went to Ford Motor Company, and I really loved Ford. I had nothing against it, but found that I got pretty bored, and I think that was an indicator to me that I really should have been an entrepreneur. I think I was designed by God to be an entrepreneur and not work at a big company. I didn't really thrive at the big company. I don't know, I was just doing okay, probably below my potential. And so I started looking for opportunities in the evenings to start a business. And so I spent evenings and weekends for off and on for a long time, and we finally launched one. I quit my job at Ford, and there was something interesting in there that I've never shared on a podcast. I sat down in March of 1992 and I made all these goals. I just spent a day alone, me and God, and I just wrote down all these thoughts and goals and plans. And I actually put a goal that I was going to quit Ford on April 30th, 1993, and I'd have enough income from this new business to support me. Well, the power of written goals is really strong, and the power of prayer and all that, because in February or March of 1993, I only had 3% of the revenue from the new company to quit my job. 3%. I had 97% to go in only 2 more months. And guess what? I got a huge client. It hit my revenue goal exactly, and I quit Ford 3 days before I planned on April 27th, 1993. So anyway, I ran that staffing company with a business partner for 5 years, sold that to a publicly traded company, started a nonprofit organization. Then I got involved flipping real estate, flipping houses. Then I started flipping lots. Then I built a small subdivision. I built some houses, which was a big mistake for a guy who doesn't know anything about construction. And then I finally got into multifamily. We built a ground up multifamily with a business partner. And the ground up multifamily did very well. We sold that in 2014 or so, 13 or 14. And then I wrote a book on multifamily, and I started Wellings Capital. And now we have 3 funds that invest in self-storage, mobile home parks, and occasional apartments.
That's interesting. So, you were an Ohio expatriate. Do you still root for the Buckeyes, or have you found yourself a new favorite team?
No, man, the Buckeyes for sure, and the Bengals.
Oh, the Bengals.
Yeah, sorry, I know
So,
you're in the northern half of the state, so you're probably a Browns fan.
I actually don't like the Browns either. I
Okay,
kind of don't have any favorite NFL team in my state. More of a
okay,
Patriots fan.
all right, that's fine. I don't blame you. I really don't.
Yeah. So, were you one
What
of the
what about
people that
Brady leaving though?
I don't follow the NFL that much, but so I don't know
I
much
don't
sports
either.
talk.
I don't
So,
either.
all right. So, were you one of the people that got inoculated against W-2 employment? If so, how were you inoculated?
I think once I realized that even I wasn't going anywhere inside Ford. I mean, I had all this, I thought I had a lot of potential. I got great grades in school, but I really didn't see it going anywhere. And I saw also a lot of people that were older than me were traveling and relocating all around the country. And I heard it was really, really bad for your family. And so when I realized that I didn't want to travel much, and I was traveling, and relocate, and I definitely didn't want to do that, I realized I definitely didn't want to be a W-2 employee. Now, when I found the freedom of having my own company, then I was 100% sure I was done with the corporate world.
Can you describe what your business looks like right now? Like, how do you make money?
So we court. We basically spend a lot of time vetting um, operators, and when we find operators we really love, we we make an agreement with them, and we bring them large sums of money from investors. We also court investors. And when the investors invest with us, let's say they put in $5 million, we'll get like 1% of that. So that would be $50,000. And then we'll get about 1% a year. And that, of course, covers all of our, keeping the lights on, the insurance and the business and the salaries of staff and all that. And then we'll also share in the profits. So after investors get the large initial profits, in other words, the investors get paid first, and then the investors get 80% of all of the income above that initial payment as well. And then we get 20%. So we basically share in the back end of the profit. We usually end up making, let's say, about 10% of the total profit. In the back end, the investors get 90.
So if I was to build up a business like yours, how would I go around doing that?
What you'd want to do is figure out if you want to get into commercial real estate. If you want to get into residential, that's fine. And I can talk about that for as long as you want as well. But if you want to get into commercial real estate, you're going to want to pick which asset class you want to become an expert in. Self-storage, mobile home parks, multifamily, senior living, retail, commercial, industrial commercial. And then once you become an expert in that, there's a lot of ways to get there to become an expert. And if you want to spend some time, I could go over a lot of those ways. And then once you're an expert and you've got all the contacts and you've gotten to know the business and the people in the business, you'll probably find that you'll naturally meet somebody you want to partner with. Then you'll partner with them and go to the races.
What are some of the best lessons you've learned in your career?
One big one is the difference between investing and speculating. Investing is when your principal is generally safe and you've got a chance to make a profit. And speculating is when your principal is not at all safe and you've got a chance to make a profit. And so when I sent a whole bunch of friends and I sent about $1 million down a hole in the ground in North Dakota and hoped that oil would come out of it, we put $1 million in and we expected to get at least 10 or 20 million out. Well, when that didn't happen, I lost all that money. I had nothing at all to show for it because that money was basically involved, down the bottom of a hole, effectively. That's speculating. When I bought a self-storage facility that had, hundreds of tenants already and we're paying rent every month, that is investing, because creating real wealth is the goal of investing. And creating real wealth, true wealth, is assets that produce income. And assets that produce income, that's not a fancy car, that's not a mansion, that is not a big diamond ring. Those don't produce any income. Bitcoin doesn't produce income. And so it's speculation, okay? It's completely dependent on people's emotions, the mood on Wall Street, the oil price, war in the Middle East, all kinds of things. But assets that produce income like self-storage, multifamily, mobile home parks create true wealth. And I think that's why most of the wealthiest people in the world invest in commercial real estate.
Yeah. So why would you say commercial real estate in your opinion, is commercial real estate better than other real estate?
It's because residential real estate is based on comps. The value is based on the neighborhood. That's something you can't control much. Commercial real estate is based on a math formula. So make sure you're good in math, Ephraim, because this math formula is the most important formula I know. It's very simple, sort of like E equals MC squared. Simple and elegant. Okay, so value is the income divided by the rate of return. In other words, the value is the net operating income divided by the cap rate. Now, the cap rate is also the capitalization rate. That is the rate of return that an investor can expect on an unleveraged asset. That means no debt, for that type of asset in that market and that condition at that point in time. That's the cap rate. And they typically run 4, 5, 6, 7%. They used to be 10 or 12%, but now they're around 4 to 6 or 7. In Columbus, Ohio, they might be 4.5 for multifamily, but in your town, they might be 6.5 for multifamily. For example, the higher the cap rate, the lower the price. So Columbus, Ohio, having a 4.5% cap rate means the prices of that same apartment building would be higher. Now, net operating income is all the revenue you collect. It's all the income, the rents, everything else you sell, minus the operating expenses. And that's the net operating income. If you divide the income divided by the cap rate, you'll get the value. This means it's within your control, not completely, of course, but it's largely in your control to do things to add value. When you add value, you increase income. When you increase income, you increase the value of the property by the exact same amount. Now, when you increase the value of the property, you're dramatically increasing the value of the investor's equity. And the reason is, if you can increase the value of the property by 20%, but you've got, let's say, 66% debt on it and 33%, approximately 33% equity, that means cash you invested yourself. That means there's a 2-to-1 lever on it. There's leverage, okay? So that means it basically can triple the value of your equity. So if your asset goes up 20%, you're likely, it's a 3-to-1, I said 2-to-1, you're likely going to see that the value of the equity doesn't go up 20%, it goes up 3 times as much, or 60%. That is a huge, huge increase. Now, the problem is it works against you exactly the same way. If your property income goes down 20%, then your equity would go down 60%.
Yeah, interesting. So, I'll probably try to go into commercial real estate then. So,
I think that'd be a good idea.
So, what is the most rewarding part of your job?
I think it is, investors these days are given the widest opportunity, the widest variety of investment possibilities of any time in history because of the internet, because there's investors from all around the world looking at assets, because of the Jobs Act, which was a law that was passed in 2012. All these things have meant that there's a wide variety of investment opportunities. And the problem is a lot of them are really bad opportunities. They're not opportunities that would be really good for the, for the investor. And so we get the joy of actually, we get the joy of finding the very best investments for people and then getting to see them plug into those best investments. And so that's why that's what brings me great joy, because I know these investors are really getting the very best opportunity they're going to get anywhere.
How do you find co-investors?
We do one thing. We create content. Here's a story, and you asked me for some lessons learned along the way. This is one of the very, very biggest ones. Imagine you go up north. This is an allegory. It's just a kind of a silly story, but hopefully it'll be helpful. If you went up north and you didn't have any food and you wanted to live on salmon, and you knew there was a lot of salmon in these creeks and streams and rivers, but they were dark rivers, you could be a spear fisherman. And so that means you'd have to get the perfect branch with the right weight and the right straightness. And then you'd have to get a knife and carve it, and you'd have to get a really nice spear point on the end. And maybe you'd get a rock like the Native Americans did, and you would whittle it down and make it into a spear point. And then you'd have to practice a lot so you could hit a salmon swimming in the water. And then you'd have to hope a salmon swims by, and you'd have to hope you're a good shot, and then you hoped you were able to get it to shore without losing it. So there's a lot of things to do to be a spear fisherman, and you might get some fish, you might not. And that's what happens if you go out and chase investors and sell investors. If you're trying to get co-investors by chasing them, they'll run away, I promise. But if you want to get salmon, you should become a grizzly bear. And that's where this analogy is a little silly. But a grizzly bear, they actually stand in the water, in the waterfall, and they unhinge their jaw basically, and they open their mouth really wide, and then salmon basically are jumping right into their mouth. And there's pictures of this online. If you want to get investors, the way to do it is to be a grizzly bear at a waterfall. The way to do that is to create a lot of content. That means you write blogs, you do podcasts like this one, you get your name out there, and when a lot of people see your name, when a lot of people see what you're doing, when a lot of people think, wow, Ephraim really understands this stuff and I can relate to his style, you'll have investors coming to you asking if they can invest with you. And that is the best way that we know to do it.
Cool. Because like I've heard a lot of other kind of strategies in finding co-investors. And my dad, he invests in actual real estate, and he has 7 properties. We're just kind of starting up now. But like he wanted to find some co-investors for the next purchases of properties. But we were just trying to figure out the best strategy to go about that. So that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope that helps.
So,
I heard that story from a guy named Richard C. Wilson. And Richard C. Wilson is at the Family Office Club. And he teaches people how to find investors for their deals.
what is the least rewarding part of your work?
I'm going to be it sounds a little silly here, but it's dealing with emails. Honestly, it used to be, of course, this was way before your time, but in the mid to late 1990s, when emails started, you would get so excited. You would hear a little thing that said, ding, you got mail, or whatever. And you would hear that little ding and you would run over there and check your email. Oh, it's an ad. Wow. Hey, look, they're selling, whatever. And now people, honestly, at least me, I hate email. I mean, I know it's necessary for my business, but I really don't really enjoy, getting a lot of emails and sorting through them. I mean, a lot of my day today, though I planned to write an article and actually a chapter for my new book, I actually spent a lot of the day responding to emails. And I do that more often than not. And it really, really gets in my way.
How much time do you spend on your properties?
Well, since we don't personally manage these properties anymore, we sold our last large property a week ago today. And so now Wellings Capital is a third party. We just raise money to invest in other people's deals. That's what we do. So we don't spend any time on our properties. Now, I will say that we do due diligence trips quite often out to see properties that our operators might invest in. And then when we can, we go out to see properties that have already been acquired. For example, I was in your area recently. I was in a town 20 miles south of Columbus called Lancaster, and I was visiting a large mobile home park that we invested in about a year ago.
What systems did you put in place so that your business could run without you?
That's a really good question, and what I did is not systems so much. There's a concept called who, not what, and I followed that concept. I found a phenomenal administrative assistant about 5 years ago, and he was a Liberty University student, and he graduated from Liberty, and he went half-time with us, and then over a couple of years he went to full-time. And now I made him about a year and a half ago, I made him into a partner because he did so well. And he handles so much of that stuff that the business it can't create content without me. It's not going to write books and it's not going to do podcasts without me. But a lot of the stuff behind the scenes, like today, we're sending checks or wires to 52 investors. Well, he's doing all that. It's a lot of work, and he's doing it without my help, except I wrote the letter to the investors.
Why did you call one of your podcasts How to Lose Money?
So our podcast is called How to Lose Money because I used to go to conferences and events with real estate investors or even for family stuff. In fact, I went to one in Columbus, Ohio for homeschool families in 2009. I remember at the big, nice Hilton there in, what was that little town, that area called Polaris Mall area?
Yeah, Polaris.
Yeah. And, but I would see these families and these men or these individuals, real estate investors, women, whatever, they would be up there and they would tell all their amazing stories of success. And I would see the people in the room kind of shrinking down. And when I talked to them later, they'd say, "Oh, I'll never be that good. I'll never have that much success. That guy was lucky. He had all the breaks. He had all the good stuff happen to him. Man, look at his car. Look at his wife. Look at her husband. Look at all the wonderful things they have. I just don't think I could ever achieve that." Well, what I realized as I got to know these speakers really well, because I became a speaker, I realized they had the same fear, the same pain, the same doubts, the same loss. They had the same things everybody else experienced, but they had risen above it. They had persevered, and they became the success that they are today. So I thought, wouldn't it be nice to talk to people about their failures and their pain along the way, rather than just all their successes? And by talking about their pain, it gave people hope, because people realized, wow, that guy's the same as me. He had all this money lost and he had all this and that go wrong. I think I could do this because he was able to do it, or she was able to do it. I think I can do it too. So it gives people hope.
Even during a crisis like the coronavirus, there are opportunities. What opportunities are out there, and how can the average person come out of the crisis stronger?
Yeah, there are a lot of mom and pop owners. Now I'm talking about in my arena here, but there are a lot of small time owners in self-storage, in mobile home parks, and a lot of them have been holding out for years, and they're getting older and they're thinking about selling, but they might have got an offer and they might be holding out for top dollar even up to a few days ago. But now that the coronavirus news is getting more and more serious every day and people are more and more panicked, I'm guessing some of those people wish they would have taken that $7 million offer or whatever that they got last month. Some of them might be calling back and saying, "Hey, I'm ready to sell now." And so that's an opportunity to a smart buyer. Warren Buffett said, "Be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful." And when he says greedy, he's not talking about the biblical sinful kind of greed. He's talking about, he's saying, I want to buy stuff when everybody else is selling. And he said, I want to sell stuff when everybody else is buying. And so that's the best thing that people can do. If this thing goes on and we go into a recession, it will be the best time to buy we've seen in years. If you have cash, if you have investors, and if you have debt available from banks and lenders.
What is the biggest mistake that an entrepreneur can make?
I think one of the biggest mistakes, I was going to tell you what a big mistake an investor can make. So there's two big mistakes entrepreneurs make. One is quitting too soon, and the other is not quitting soon enough. Huh? That's weird. Why would I say two opposite things? Well, this is one thing, Ephraim, we learned on How to Lose Money. And that is that some people really should have known this was a bad idea. This was a bad business. A few months in, they might realize their partner's not the right person. Or they might realize their product isn't the right product. Or they might realize that there's a new huge competitor being built next door and you need to not do this. But a lot of those people should pull the plug, give the investors their money back if possible, and quit. real quick. And there's something called opportunity cost. It's also called sunk cost. You need to forget about that. I mean, it's sad that you had sunk cost. It's sad that you already wasted, let's say, $100,000 preparing to start this business. But you can't use that 100,000 as an excuse to lose another million or another 6 years of your life, like some of us did once. We started a company and we should have stopped about the first 6 months. We should have known it wasn't going to work. But we kept pressing on and on and on, and we used $300,000 of cash, and a lot of that was mine. And I wish we would have stopped. Even if I'd only got 200,000 back and quit in a year, I'd have been a lot happier than going 6 or 8 years and only getting zero back. Now, other people quit right before they have success. They might have persevered and persevered. There was a gold miner, this is a true story, out in Colorado, and he was digging with his uncle for gold. He had all this equipment. He had raised money from a bunch of investors in Pennsylvania, and they took this equipment and they were mining for gold, but they had no idea what they were doing. And they had some initial gold that made them feel really positive, and they actually started thinking, this is going to be wonderful, this is going to be great. Well, then all of a sudden the gold stopped. Well, they did two things wrong. They packed up and went back to Pennsylvania and left their equipment there, and they just sold it to somebody for cheap, not scrap, but cheap. And the second thing is they didn't get any advice. They wanted to keep their find secret, so they didn't go out and ask for a consultant. Well, the next person who bought their scrap material, their equipment, he actually went and got a consultant and said, what's wrong here? There was gold all the way through this cave or whatever, but then it stopped. And the consultant says, oh, I know exactly what happened. There was an earthquake back in whatever year, and those gold veins got shifted by 3 feet. You need to move over 3 feet and start again. And that's what the guy did, and he hit the biggest gold strike in Colorado, from what I understand. Now, the guy and his uncle were back in Pennsylvania, and they learned a very painful lesson. Don't quit too soon. Keep persevering. Because they did have success early on, they should have kept going, and they should have got some advice. And so those are some things that I have learned as an entrepreneur, and those are 3 things I'll tell you 4 things people do wrong. They quit too soon, or they don't persevere. That's 1. Number 2, they don't quit soon enough. Number 3, they don't get good advice. They think they can go it alone. And number 4, they have the wrong partners. Now, it says in 2 Corinthians 6, don't partner, light should not partner with darkness. And so it's really, really important that you get somebody who not only agrees with you spiritually and personally and, has the same values and morals as you, but that they have a fantastic business sense and they agree with you on business ethics and that they're a great business person as well. And so those are 4 big mistakes entrepreneurs make.